Hello and welcome. Welcome to worship. It is good to gather with you, even as we are scattered. I wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge that I had a good time being away on vacation. I spent that time with my parents at their house in Belleville and also up at their place in Madoc, which is their summer sort of vacation home. It's not on water, but it's on about an acre of land, and it's a beautiful place. And it's a place of family and rest and relaxation and watching our dogs and enjoying each other. And while we didn't do an awful lot, the big kind of highlights were things like having a bonfire and watching the intra was it what intra-league, is that what they called it, the Jays playing against the Jays as they before Major League Baseball came fully back. There were a couple of games they showed where they just split the team into half and played against each other. And we got to watch that. And Dad and Matt and I watching Jays baseball is kind of a normal thing, and felt very good to do something normal on vacation. It was good to rest. It was good to recognize that even in the simplicity, even in the not doing an awful lot of things, we still were together. We still had a lot of joy being together. We still had a lot to enjoy simply in the normal rhythms of life, having dinner, watching a movie, doing those things. While I was away, Toronto moved into stage 3, which is the final stage of our staged reopening of the economy, which means that a lot of places are open that weren't open before. Gyms are open, and restaurants can have indoor dining, and you can go to the movies. And while there are still a number of procedures in place to try and ensure physical distancing, there's a lot more that you can do now than you could do before. And I was discussing this with a congregant on the phone, and we were sort of talking about, the fact that you could do these things, but would you want to? Or some people don't feel comfortable at all doing those things. Some people haven't even wanted to take takeout because that itself feels a little more risky. And so she was saying it was weird and that we were in this weird time. Well, it's 2020. What hasn't been weird? But she went on to say that we're sort of in this in-between time. It's the worst of the first wave is over in Toronto and Ontario. We're on this slow burn, as Dr. Tam puts it, and yet Dr. Tam and many other medical officials are very much concerned about what is coming in the fall. And so we have this sense of things are kind of all right now, but we don't know what's coming. And it's this weird in between, I don't know quite how to feel stage that we are in, place that we are in. And I feel like when this all began, we were sort of we were all Team Canada, right? Team Ontario. We were all pulling in the same direction. We knew what we needed to do. We had to stay at home. We had to keep our distance. We were only going out when we had to go out for things like groceries. And it was kind of like we were at the beginning of a race. So Dr. Tam has also referred to dealing with COVID-19 as a marathon. And I've never done a marathon, but I have done a couple of half marathons. And last year in October, I did the Toronto Waterfront half marathon. It was the first time I'd done a half marathon. And I remember being at the starting line in this crowd scene that now feels like something that would just be terrifying. It was intimidating at the time, but more because I had not done that distance of a run before, and I was afraid I wouldn't be able to finish, and I was doing it on my own, so it was a little scary, but not in the way it would be if I was in the midst of a crowd right now. And I will tell you that when you start a race like that, you're sort of in your corral waiting to begin for quite a while. There's a a time where you're all sort of filling into your corral. Other waves are being released ahead of you, and you're just waiting for your time to make it to the start line and to go. And you sort of start to recognize the people who are in the same space as you. And I will tell you about that race that the first 5 miles were pretty easy, and they kind of flew past. I was with my group, and I knew I can do 5 miles. 5 miles was a distance I was doing regularly at that point. And when I run, I do an interval of running and then an interval of walking. So I would run and I'd be with my group, and then I'd walk and I'd fall back a little bit, but then I'd run and I'd catch up with them again. And so you were with the same people, and you could just, we were all pulling in the same direction, and it made it fairly easy. Around mile 6, things started to get a little more difficult. I refer to it as it got real. I realized, oh my gosh, I've only gone halfway. And in mile 7, my calf muscle, I have a reoccurring issue with my calf muscle. And my calf muscle issue kicked up, and it didn't hurt. I was wearing my compression socks that give my muscles some lift and some protection. But it did this weird thing where it felt like the muscle kind of separated a little bit and then went twisty and then went. That's the best I can explain. That's what it felt like in my calf muscle. And I stopped. I pulled up short and stopped for a minute, and then panic texted some friends of what to do who had done much longer, who had a friend of mine who's done a marathon before, and she said, take 3 or 4 minutes, take a good long time, and just stretch that calf muscle out. Don't worry about it. It's not going to make it impossible for you to finish. She said I had to do that on more than one of my marathons, and just take the time to properly stretch it and you'll be okay. So of course I did that, and then I fell behind, right? Fell behind, lost touch with my group. And from there on out, it was a long, tough slog to the finish line. And that's kind of how I feel like we are right now. There are some people who are far ahead of us. They are the ones who are comfortable going to the restaurants, and they're doing their thing, and they're much less worried about all this. And then there are some people behind us who still aren't doing their own grocery shopping. And then maybe there's where we are, or maybe you're in one of those groups ahead. Maybe you're in one of those groups behind. Wherever you're at, I think we're all sort of a little bit discombobulated and less connected than we were when this began. And that reminded me of the people of God in the book of Exodus, and specifically in Exodus 16. Because at that point, they are a month into their freedom. God has brought them through the Red Sea. They are out of slavery. They are on their way to Sinai, where Moses will meet with God and get the 10 Commandments. But the people don't know that, because this is unfolding for them in real time. And they're just a month into this long, stinking walk in the desert. They don't know it's going to last for 40 years. For them, a month has been a long time. And so what do the people do? Well, they begin to complain. And they start to say things like, oh, that we had died in Egypt. Oh, that the Lord had struck us down in Egypt. At least there we had enough meat. At least there we had enough food. At least there we didn't have to wonder where we were going to find water. And, they're sort of in this moment of recognizing that living in freedom is hard. And it reminded me, I'm obsessed with Hamilton, the Broadway play Hamilton. And there's a moment in that when I got to see it at the beginning of March, right before everything shut down. And when I saw it on stage, this line just leapt out at me. And it's Hamilton is talking to George Washington, and George Washington is talking to Hamilton, actually. And George Washington says to Hamilton, I remember when I was your age and I had this head full of dreams of dying like a martyr. And they're in the midst of a war, and Hamilton's asking for a command, and George Washington is trying to keep him safe. And Hamilton says yes, and George Washington says to him, dying is easy, young man. Living is harder. And that's echoed later in the play once they've won the war. And he says, George Washington again says, winning was easy, young man. Governing is harder. And it's this recognition that that's sort of the moment that that Israel finds themselves in, that they are in this moment of, this is hard, and we don't know where we're going to get food, and we're in a desert, and we have a long way to go, and the promised land is far, far from us, and they are just complaining. They are in this moment of wanting and wishing and waiting and complaining. And they start to say, we had enough food in Egypt. It's funny how under a certain amount of pressure, all the things you were ready to die for don't matter too much, and all you want is comfort. And that's kind of where the people find themselves, right? They are in this time of anxiety and uncertainty, and anxiety and uncertainty can reorient you towards all the things you thought you would give up for your ideals. And that's where Israel finds itself at that point in its story. And it's a difficult thing that they're going through. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying they should have just kept walking and not had a problem. No, it was a tough thing, and there was all kinds of anxiety and uncertainty. And I think there's a really good parallel for how we're feeling in 2015. I don't know, I just wanted to throw us back 5 years. In 2020, because of all that we've been dealing with COVID-19, this is all over the world, and different countries are at different places and dealing with their second wave or dealing with their continued outbreaks, and it's just a difficult thing. And so this reminded me of a song I love. I always think in song lyrics, and I'm going to include a link below this sermon so you can hear the song, but I also wanted to read the lyrics for you. It's by Sarah Groves. It's called Painting Pictures of Egypt, and it's really about this moment in Israel's life. She says, the lyrics go like this: I don't want to leave here. I don't want to stay. It feels like pinching to me, either way. And the places I long for most are the places where I've been. They are calling out to me like a long-lost friend. It's not about losing faith. It's not about trust. It's all about comfortable when you move so much. And the place I wasn't perfect, but I had found a way to live. And it wasn't milk or honey, but then neither is this. I've been painting pictures of Egypt, leaving out what it lacks, because the future feels so hard and I want to go back. But the places that used to fit me cannot hold the things I've learned, and those roads were closed off to me while my back was turned. The past is so tangible, I know it by heart. Familiar things are never easy to discard. And I was dying for some freedom, but now I hesitate to go. I am caught between the promise and the things I know. I've been painting pictures of Egypt and leaving out what it lacks, because the future feels so hard and I want to go back. But the places that used to fit me cannot hold the things I've learned, and those roads were closed off to me while my back was turned. And then she has this bridge near the end. It says, "If it comes too quick, I may not appreciate it. Is that the reason behind all this time in the sand? And if it comes too quick, I may not recognize it. Is that the reason behind all this time in the sand?" Ha! Always gets to me, that song. So first of all, I want to say to you that God doesn't waste time. God doesn't waste anything. Everything that happens, God uses for a purpose. He doesn't waste time. And so this time when we feel in between and uncertain, God is using this for a purpose. And we don't know what that purpose is, and it may take us a long time to figure out what that purpose is. But I promise you that God is using it. That God is doing something among us that if it came too quick, we may not appreciate or recognize it. And I also want to point out to you that as the people begin to grumble and worry about where their food is going to come from, God provides for them manna and quail, bread from heaven, and meat in the evening, and for the next 40 years. They have everything they need. God provides. We didn't do an awful lot on vacation, but we did everything we needed to do. And God provided us with so many joyful moments, even in the midst of a time when we felt anxious and uncertain and like nothing was normal. So I just want to encourage you that even in this wilderness moment, even in this wilderness time, God is with us, God is providing, and He will never leave us, and He will never forsake us. Be blessed, be encouraged, trust in the Lord, dear friends. Amen.